William Wallace, otherwise known as Braveheart, was a 13th century Scottish warrior and politician who became a legendary figure in Scottish history and the independence movement. But what did he do to become a legend? And does he merit this status? This is the Wallace Monument in Stirling in Scotland. It's a celebration of a great Scottish hero, William Wallace. It dominates the skyline over Stirling. Surely this source is going to tell us everything we need to know about the man. It's been built near the site of Wallace's most famous victory over the English, the Battle of Stirling Bridge in 1297. It was constructed in the later 19th century, a time when there was a big revival of interest in Scottish history and identity. The whole monument itself feels very much like a church. It's got stained glass windows. They want us to worship William Wallace. In the middle of the room is a huge sword, which some people claim was brandished by Wallace. First thing that strikes me is it's rather large, and it does make me question how likely it is he would have been able to wield this thing. If we assume that this was his sword, as the people who put it here want us to assume, then we have to get an impression of Wallace as this huge man, somebody who was so strong, he was capable of holding this thing. So we have to ask, was William Wallace really as significant as this monument makes out? My next source is held in Edinburgh at the National Library of Scotland. This particular source is a poem written around the 1470s by a poet known as Blind Harry. And it's been beautifully written out here in Old Scots. It sets out the image of Wallace as a superhuman patriot who fought the English. Here we've got a passage that says, Wallace, his way through them did cut so clean, as if he had more than a mortal been. We get this image that we got with the Hollywood movie Braveheart jumps out from this poem. It also says some other things though which are a little bit problematic. So one of the things that this particular source says is that Wallace won the Battle of Falkirk. I hope your lordships plainly all do see, once more I've set this ancient kingdom free. But various other sources suggest that the Scots actually lost that battle. So why is the poet telling fibs? So far I've seen two sources, the monument and Blind Harry's poem. Both seem to exaggerate Wallace's achievements. These sources are the work of his supporters. But I wonder how he was regarded by his enemies in England. In 1305, English troops finally caught William Wallace and they brought him here to London, where they took him to the Tower. A few weeks later, he was executed for high treason. I'm here at Kew at the National Archives in London, not far from where Wallace was executed. And buried deep within the archive, there's a fascinating account of the execution. I have in front of me one of King Edward's Exchequer pipe rolls, and it outlines in Latin the costs of the execution. Up here, we have the key paragraph that outlines all the gruesome details. He was hanged until he was almost dead, cut down, his body was cut open, his innards were taken out and burnt before him, and then he was cut into 4 sections, and those pieces were taken to 4 different towns. King Edward's Exchequer rolls generally listed government expenses, but Wallace's entry goes into more detail. It says that it cost 61 shillings and 10 pence to execute Wallace.
This is no small sum of money, so why have they gone to this expense? Well, the source says that Wallace was a robber, a rebel and a traitor, that Wallace falsely sought to call himself King of Scotland.
So it's clear from this pipe roll that for the English, who were at war with the Scots, Wallace was a very important figure, and capturing and executing him was a major victory.
We know that sources can distort the truth, and it's coming here to England and seeing what William Wallace's enemies made of him that's really convinced me about the significance of the man. Okay, so the Wallace monument and the great man's sword were clearly exaggerations, and the Blind Harry poem made claims about his battle victories that we know to be false. But the pipe roll, which showed the lengths that his enemies went to get rid of the man, really shows he was somebody of significance. William Wallace was someone that some people here in England were glad to be rid of for good.